Well, Joe, the JFK assassination files, they are out this morning, but are they putting more than 60 years of theories and conspiracies to rest? That's the big question. The American people, all of you, you can now read the unredacted documents for yourself. Of course, they're related to JFK's 1963 assassination. The Trump administration released thousands of pages of records about the assassination of the president that were previously withheld by classification. This follows Trump's executive order calling for the release of those records tied to the assassinations of not just John F. Kennedy, but also Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. Political analyst, author, and presidential historian Rubino is poring over those documents still, I would imagine, this morning. He is joining us right now. Good morning. Good to see you. You know, people are still coming through. I imagine you haven't gotten through all of the thousands of pages, but in terms of what you have seen, what's the big takeaway? What are your thoughts, your reaction this morning?
Not a lot. No, there certainly is no there certainly is no smoking gun here. A lot of it is kind of tangentially related. Part of it is, and it's very interesting to read about how the Kennedy administration had approved the assassination attempts on Fidel Castro, known as Operation Mongoose. The other was the assassination of the Dominican Republic strongman Rafael Trujillo, who had been in there for 31 years, and what the United States had known, what the CIA had known. But it's really a lot of it about, I think, more embarrassment of the CIA with their involvement in some of these assassination attempts than there isn't anything that says directly that there was a second gunman. It's very much kind of agnostic about it so far.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read a few of the pages, and it was interesting to even see some things that John F. Kennedy Jr. said and some of the things he pointed to before he was killed in that plane crash, specifically pointing to some of our leaders at the time. Do these documents, in your opinion, change the long-held findings? And you mentioned that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, but do you think that there is enough in here to change the question that there may have been a second shooter?
Not so much in the first tranche. It doesn't mean that there wasn't a second shooter. It just means that there was certainly would not be, I don't think, in a court of law or in a congressional committee that this would certainly be any sort of a smoking gun. A lot of this is just kind of tangentially related to the Kennedy assassination, but I think it really just embarrasses the CIA. The Church Commission was established in 1975 by Senator Church in Idaho, and they looked into a lot of these assassination attempts that the United States was involved with the Cold War. It was very much a geopolitical battle between basically communism and anti-communism, and the United States on the side of opposing communism, and sometimes that meant getting involved in the internecine affairs of other countries.
You know, now that is a very interesting revelation because we know at the time President Kennedy was assassinated, he came out and was very vocal and very critical of the CIA. In fact, he was making plans, it's been reported, to dismantle that entire agency. So the CIA, they were kind of at odds, the president and the CIA, during that time. So that is going to be, I think, a significant revelation for a lot of people. In terms of—
Yes, and that's something that conspiracy theorists really kind of point to. Certainly, his last speeches where he took on the Federal Reserve, where he took on the CIA. But it's interesting because President Eisenhower had originally approved the Bay of Pigs invasion, or rather had began the process of it, and then John F. Kennedy came in. This is a failed coup to try to take out Fidel Castro, to defeat Cuba militarily, using native-born Cubans, and this became a complete failure. I think John F. Kennedy learned from that, and later on in life, 1962, 1963, he was not only incredulous toward the CIA, but he was also incredulous to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, many of whom believed that the United States should have invaded Cuba rather than putting an embargo on Cuba in the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962.
Yeah, the president, in fact, felt as though he was lied to by people
Yep.
within his own government. He was lied to and misled to taking the actions that he took. So he was very, very upset about that. You know, in one of the most scrutinized events in U.S. history, now in terms of what we're learning so far, does this in any way change history? We don't have much time, but does this change do you think this will change people's view of history in the events that were happening around his assassination and what was happening worldwide?
No, I don't. It will change. Certainly, I think the Church Commission kind of presented the information. I think Americans, at least that have a vague interest in politics, know that the CIA was certainly involved in assassinations in the 1960s. This just puts kind of an exponent on that, if you will. But in terms of anything to do with there being any sort of a silver bullet in terms of saying this is what happened with JFK. I think that it's basically any sort of conspiracy. Even if there was a conspiracy,
Mm.
the evidence is certainly just not in this first tranche of
Yeah.
documents.
Well, we know one thing that has lingered is the distrust of the CIA. And of course, they are an agency now trying to rebuild trust with the American people. So, Rich Rubino, thank you
Absolutely.
so much for joining us this morning. Thank you for your insight.